My task is to speak of the scientific and medical underpinnings of the Learning Center's work utilizing mind-body modalities. This is a huge and growing field of research, and I'll give you an overview for understanding our work. The ACE study that I mentioned in the video, one study among many, is where we'll begin. ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. As I said, Kaiser Permanente and the Center for Disease Control studied 17,421 adults between 1995 and 1997. During their physical exams at Kaiser, patients were asked whether, as children, before the age of 18, they had experienced emotional, physical, or sexual abuse or neglect, recurrent physical abuse. They were also asked about whether they had experienced any of the following in their households: someone who was chronically depressed, mentally ill, institutionalized, or suicidal, an alcohol or drug abuser, incarcerated, a mother who was treated violently, or they lived with only one or no biological parent, which would include the death of a parent. Researchers found that 2/3 of these 17,000 patients had experienced at least one category of childhood adversity, and 1 in 6 had experienced 4 or more. The higher the ACE score, the worse the adult health outcome. Some of the participants did engage in unhealthy coping mechanisms, such as smoking, drinking, and drug abuse. But the negative effect on adult health remained high, even in those with higher ACE scores and absolutely no unhealthy behaviors. For example, people with an ACE score of 7 or higher who didn't smoke, didn't drink, weren't overweight, still had a 360% higher risk of heart disease than those with an ACE score of 0. The study showed that people with these adverse experiences as children are more likely to develop cardiovascular disease, cancer, lung disease, liver disease, diabetes, and immune disorders like multiple sclerosis and lupus. This list, you note, includes some of the most common and costly medical conditions in our society. In some individuals, ACEs can also lead to an increased risk of unhealthy behaviors and the risk of violence or re-victimization. This can, of course, lead to an increase in ACEs for their children and risk for society at large. So how do adverse childhood experiences contribute to disease? What happens in an individual's body in response to ACEs or any trauma? In response to a stressful event, the sympathetic, well, here's where it gets a little gnarly. The sympathetic portion of our automatic nervous system is triggered. We experience, as you know, an increased heart rate, such as I'm experiencing right now, increased blood flow into our muscles and away from our digestive tract. Our muscles tense, our pupils dilate, fat and glucose flow into our bloodstream. We are primed for fight, flight, or freeze. Emotionally, we feel fear, terror. This cascade begins with the brain and involves the amygdala, the brain's alarm center, a part of the primitive brain that has no concept of language or time and is therefore not susceptible to language or to reason. Stimulation of the brain's regulator of the endocrine system, the hypothalamus, prompts the adrenal gland to release adrenaline, or epinephrine, and cortisol. Nerve pathways prompt immune cells to secrete powerful inflammatory molecules, or cytokines, which activate our immune response. These molecules lead to inflammation in the body, which has consequences if it's there repeatedly, such as the laying down of plaque in blood vessels. If as children or as adults, we are repeatedly thrust into situations which are physically and or emotionally arousing of our fight, flight, freeze response, and we are unable to discharge this arousal, we come to live in a state of chronic hyperarousal, of high biological readiness to react to a traumatic event, even long after the event has passed, a state of sympathetic nervous system dominance. Our parasympathetic autonomic nervous system, the part that is our rest and digest system, which should be our baseline, is unable to come online and allow us to experience a resting and healthy state. The hypervigilance of a dangerous childhood, of course, served us well in our distant past as Homo sapiens, where it was vital to be constantly alert to danger, where fear and worry gave us a competitive edge. Because of our collective past, we are hardwired to focus on the negative and react to it intensely, but there's a price to pay. In the young developing brain, this chronically elevated state of fight or flight causes actual biophysical changes that affect the expression of our genes. The brain is tipped into a state of constant hyperarousal, sending inflammatory hormones and adrenaline and cortisol constantly coursing through the body. In addition, adverse childhood experiences cause profound physical changes to the area of the brain that processes our emotions and our memories, the hippocampus, causing an actual reduction in its size and function. This can impact how we react to and manage stress for life. Chronic revving up of our immune system can lead it to turn against our own bodies, our own tissues, in autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, and even eczema. So how do meditation, mindfulness, yoga, and the like impact this negative cycle? Here we can evoke the crucial concept of neuroplasticity. I wish I had more time to talk about that. Change has to do with feedback. We focus on breath, which leads to a quieting of the mind or our thoughts. Deep exhalation actually triggers the parasympathetic or calming nervous system. The more we change the mind, the more we change the brain. Changing the brain pathways, in turn, decreases the whole cascade of brain, nervous system, immune system response, which leads to a greater sense of mental and physical well-being, which leads to greater joy and contentment. And who doesn't want that? Also, when we can bring our higher brain, specifically the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, got that, online, and can name what we are feeling, the amygdala calms down and stops the cascade. This is where meditation, mindfulness, yoga play a crucial role. With drugs, we can temporarily dampen the sympathetic or arousing nervous system, but there's absolutely no drug that will increase the activity of the parasympathetic or calming nervous system. We have to rely on our mind and our breath for this. As a doctor, I think about care for those who've experienced trauma as a three-legged stool, a metaphor that belongs to Raquel. One leg is Western medicine, one is talk therapy, and perhaps the heretofore missing, at least in Western culture, is mind-body medicine. That's why I support the Learning Center at Red Willow. Thank you.